Haidong! In this video, we're going to talk about aspects of the thrusting focus. Number 1. This focus is usually taught with first degrees. I believe it's also taught on a second degree curriculum, but it's an introduction to thrusting. Now, if you did watch my other video about my own ideas about the focuses, I feel like you should probably teach this to your students as early as they're willing or able to, because thrusts are going to be really important when you do start sparring people. So let's dive right into it. So as usual, you're going to do your draw, right? So you're going to draw into it and then kenjok. So thrusting focus number 1 is all from kimase. 2 and 3 are going to be from different stances. But we're just going to be in kimase, right? So the first thing I want you to think about is tip placement. Now that might sound pretty obvious because, like, well, the whole purpose of the thrusting focus is to cluster 6 stabs here and cluster 6 stabs here. But think about the tip as you transition from one to the other, right? So the first one, again, we almost always start with the left side. As you plant it on your left, think about what the tip is. So it shouldn't start here, right? And be like, meh, right? Very different stab. Here, right? So the tip should be about in my opponent's core area. Here, again, as I stab, in, right? As I'm here, again, I don't do drop down. I keep the tip within this general core, right? I'm going to be here, thrust, here, thrust, here, thrust. I'm not moving the tip out of the way, right? So again, I'm not going to be like here and then like meh, meh. Now obviously that looks really stupid if I do that in the kind of cartoonish way, but it's going to be something really important as you start fighting more, right? You always want, not always, but you usually want to have your tip generally honed in on your opponent, specifically the throat if you can. This is going to be really important as you go through the higher ones, right? So if we're here, right, I don't want to be like, right? This is not a good position for a stab, although this is in fact a guard in some other martial arts. But versus if I'm here, I can always kind of like aim in for my opponent's throat. I can really stab anywhere I want to. Those aren't powerful, but if I keep the tip kind of in the same area, I can kind of maneuver around the sword and kind of get a good position and then go in for that thrust, right? So that's going to be one aspect I'd like you to focus on. The second aspect is going to be generating power from your hips, right? Now, if you try to stab someone just with your arms, especially with a heavier weapon like a sword, it'll probably work, right? But you can get so much more power from your hips, right? So this is me just upright. Not going to break any world records, right? Versus if I'm here and engage my hip, right? So notice I'm not doing this kind of thing. I'm engaging the hip, right? And as I stab in, also I'm like hip checking it, right? I'm twisting my hips to engage more with the thrusts, right? That's going to generate a lot more power, right? And it's also going to keep, so for example, if someone does try to stab me, if I have my hips powered behind it, I can actually deflect that thrust coming in so it veers off, right? Versus here, if I really grind with my sword, if I want to, especially if I stab or step, I can go into that stab and just grind up against the side of the sword and just puncture them, right? So don't forget your hips, right? And this is something that if you are a judge or you're watching someone test, this is very obvious. You will see people do this because, like, oh, do your thrusting focus. This is very common because there's just so many techniques, right? And people get tired or lazy. Versus, now this is going to be a little more effort, right? Versus getting your hips prepped. Feel the energy, going for the throat, right? So again, you're aiming for a vertical portion here. Technically, you can still go for a diagonal and sever this way. I'm trying to get up in this nice area because I can also twist in to the back of the head, right? Because that's the only on-off switch on a human being, right? So right at the brainstem. So if it's here, push upright, even starting horizontal, upright, overhead, cover, and kenjok, right? So keep in mind, using your hips to puncture wherever you're going. The third portion is going to be, think about how defensible you are as you prep for your stab. So for example, if I'm here, I'm just kind of nyeh, I could probably still generate a good powerful in my stab, not unlike Yedo 9, right? But here, again, my tip is not really in the general vicinity. I'm not really defensible, right? Versus if I'm here, right? If someone gives me an uppercut, for example, if someone gives me a down cut, I can push in, I can use my hip to push into a block if I need to. All these different preps could all be defenses if you want to. In fact, these are in fact used as defenses, right? So if you think about Sangsu 10, right? We use this, also Yedo 9. We also do this also in Yedo 9 as well as in some of the Banguk forms. It's a decent defense, right? It's also a good place to stab someone. So keep in mind your defensibility in each of these preps, right? So for example, if I'm trying to stab you and I suddenly realize, oh, I can't do that, I can still defend myself pretty happily. If someone's coming in this way, I can shift, use this swinging motion of the mass to block, right? I can actually just have my body bowled over so I can lean into a block in case they're really, really powerful. I can even half sword it if I need to stop a cut. This one is a little bit weirder, right? But I can still do a swinging block if I need to. I can keep the tip honed in. I can do a twisting stab if I need to. All sorts of fun things, right? So keep in mind how defensible you are in each of these stabbing positions. So with that, I know this is allegedly a higher level focus because again, it's primarily for first and second degrees. But again, I would recommend teaching this as early as your students and you are willing, just because stabs are going to be really helpful. Keeping in mind where the tip is in terms of your defenses, right, as your preps and your stabs and all fun stuff, is going to be really, really important, not just in fighting, but also in your forms and the in-betweens in your moves in your forms. But additionally, again, engaging your hip so you have a nice powerful thrust. So it's not just a simple, again, I've seen thrusts like this, not powerful, versus engage your hip, puncture, this way, right? It's almost like my body wants to move forward with it just because my hips are engaged that much. So if you really focus on engaging your hips on your thrusts, you're going to get a lot more power, and also it's going to give you the ability to roll out of the way. So that's something that seems a little bit counterintuitive, because you might think, I'm engaging so much into that stab, I can't backtrack. Versus, if I really engage, usually if I'm moving, right, so if I'm stabbing, I'm really engaging my hip, and I realize I can't, I can roll the hip into a block, right? I can roll my hip, push, right, into a different side. So engage your hips a lot more, but be careful, don't be silly and snap your lower back, because that would be bad. But keep all these ideas in mind, right? Because these are all things that you can apply to different aspects of your swordsmanship. So again, keeping the tip in your opponent's danger zone, right? So primarily around the throat. Again, being very defensible wherever you are, also really good for our thrusting focus. And engaging your hips to have a lot more power. So in this case, thrusting, right? Because you have an equal and opposite motion as you thrust. But it's also going to be true as you do cuts, right? It's going to be the same thing. As I cut this way, I'm going to have equal and opposite hip motion. Maybe not that extreme, but there's going to be some. But as usual, so those are your drills. Keep those 3 ideas in mind as you go through this focus, as well as 4, 5, and 6. Not 4, 5, and 6. 1, 2, and 3. That would be too many. As well as your forms. But so make sure you stay humble, stay safe, but also keep training. Haidong!